Hey fellow Rocket Geeks, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is the first time, I'm Chris and I'm a Rocket Geek and I'm not recovering Rocket Geek. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how I attach my carbon fiber laminate fins that I make with scissors. There'll be a link somewhere in the description or something where I go through the whole process of how I make the fins. But in this video, I'm going to show you how I attach the fins to a tube that I have prepared. And same thing, if you want to see how I do the tubes, how I prepare them, I use a lot of blue tube and carbon fiber wrap around that blue tube. Link in the description or something like that for that video. Here we have the aforementioned prepared carbon fiber tube. This is a very long, abnormally long tube for a very specific, very long 75 millimeter motor. This tube is had to be spliced somewhere in this general vicinity. There's two pieces of tube that were put together, and then I overlapped carbon fiber. So here in the center is at least four, if not five, almost 6 layers of carbon fiber overlapping that joint. Down here at the ends, there was a double wrap of carbon fiber and then a single wrap to kind of cover up some of the blemishes and whatever that happened as a result of that. Look, I'm not the greatest carbon fiber dude, all right? But I make it work. Same thing at this end, about three layers of carbon fiber here. All right, so all of that to say, I mark where the carbon fiber overlaps. So when you wrap the fiber around the tube, you end up with a small bit of carbon fiber cloth overlapping. That actually then results in more than 3 or 4 layers in a very small spot. Kind of results in a little bit of a hump. Sometimes this is really hard to show in video, but you see there's a tiny little ridge on this tube. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't show that well. A lot of times you can see it right here where the carbon fiber is a little thinner, a little thicker. I mark this so that I can use it for locating rail buttons. So if I'm going to put external rail buttons on this tube, I mark that spot and then I attach the rail buttons in that location. I find it easy to use a piece of angle iron like this on the tube to get a nice straight line up and down vertically. I don't know if it's perfect or not, don't care, close enough. It's worked for years, and so that's how I do it. Might not be the right way, probably isn't the wrong way, it's just the way I do it. Once I have the rail button line sorted out, it's time to measure the tube, and then this is a 4-fin rocket, and so I'm going to have to divide the circumference of this by 4 and kind of index the fins. I will mark rough locations for all the fins, and you will see why in a minute. Best tool I've found for this job is one of these like, I don't know, seamstress or whatever you call them, sewing tape measures that's flexible. You wrap it around. And I most generally see these at tailors and people that are making clothes. I bought it at a sewing store. They were pretty cheap, $5, easy and efficient. And that is just ever so slightly more than 10 inches around the entire tube. So we got to divide 10 by 4, which in my math is about 2.5, with a fudge factor of half the width of a pencil lead. So if I'm going to index fins at every 2.5 inches, the thing is I need this rail button location to fall in the middle of a 2.5 inch span. So 1.25 inches off of each side of the rail button guide is where I'm going to make my 2 marks. All right, mark 1, center line for the rail buttons, and mark 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark the other bases or the other fin locations using the 2.5 inch distance, and I'm going to verify that I kind of come out and I don't end up with a, 2.25 inches between one set of fins. I've got all 4 marks on here. They're pretty close. I am going to have to adjust slightly after the fact, and now I'll tell you why. The important piece to me is this mark and this mark. The distance from, actually these 2 marks, the distance from where I'm going to locate the rail buttons. So I'm going to pick one, doesn't matter which one, I'm going to pick one of these spots, and I'm going to put my first mark for the fin line on, and then I'm going to glue the first fin. After I glue the first fin, and I have the rough idea of where these go, I have a different way I put the fins on. I don't necessarily follow exactly these marks, and it's hard to explain, but I use a level, and I use a string like a sight, a bow sight or a gun sight, to align the remainder of the fins. So like I said, hard to explain until I kind of show you or you see it, but basically I need to get the first fin on and nice and straight and in alignment. And once I've done that, then if I have this fin on and I have it sitting upright, then I turn it upside down, and I use a level and a string, and I make sure the string goes straight through the center and then follows that fin perfectly down, and that the fin, when I put a level on the side, is perfectly level. And then I put the next fin on. And then I rotate, once I have those fins on and dry, I rotate this and I put a level on the 2 fins. It doesn't necessarily sit perfectly flat, but I use a horizon, I set a level on that, and then I put the next fin upright, basically at a perfectly perpendicular angle. And then I rotate the whole thing over and do the same thing. So that's how I do 4 fins. 3 fins, a little bit different. You gotta have to mark those and know your distances and do all that. But same process, I put the fin on, I draw a line, I do a sight alignment, I make sure that the fin is not cockeyed or canted, and so the line of the fin doesn't go, you don't want the fin up here, but kind of at an angle like this. I have an example fin. All right, you want your fins on here like this. You don't want them crooked, and you don't want them like this. You want them straight through the center of the tube. And I use a piece of string and a sight alignment, sight picture, along with a piece of angle iron and a mark up on the top part of the tube. There's our first mark that we made. There's another mark underneath here, and we're going to use a level. I'm going to put it across this. We're going to look at this, and we're going to see, are we dead center in the tube? And you can take and mark your level if you want for the diameter of the tube, so that you know if you're over here like this, you're over here like this. I mean, that's a big exaggeration, obviously. But if you put the little pencil marks on the bottom of your level measure the tube diameter, and you can set your level there and put your mark there, and then set the level like that. Basically look straight down and see that should be dead center. I'll have to show you the string in a minute too. Because again, an over exaggeration here, but you can see that if the tube is off slightly, canted, then you would go to do your level here, and when you'd get a level bubble, the marks on your level wouldn't line up. The distance there is off. You're off like this. You're not straight down the tube. And you're going to use the other end of this tube also. And that's part of that whole sight alignment, sight picture. By doing this and looking down there, you should see half of the, you shouldn't see a whole circle. This note, you know you're off if you're this way. All right, and you know you're off if you can't see any of the circle. You should see part of that circle, just like this. And the level should be pretty spot on. This is the highly sophisticated precision piece of equipment in conjunction with gravity that does the magic for my fin alignment. Installation of this piece of equipment is very difficult too. It requires hand tools. I can't exactly do this with one hand, but this is what the colloidal stuff looks like. Might have used a little too much, it's a paste, but that's okay. We're just tacking the fin on for now, so this is fine. I've got glue on the fin. I mean, doesn't have to take a whole lot. And then we just mash it on there, but I need two hands. Tall fins like this be a little bit of a challenge. They may want to wibble wobble and fall off, so you may have to figure out some way to tape it or brace it or something. Here's what I'm talking about, sight alignment, sight picture. Look down there and you can see the tip of this fin is over this side a little bit. It's probably a little more pronounced this way. You also want to verify when you get dead center that the base of the fin is centered on that string as well. And last but not least, you want to take a view, and you can see how sensitive this is if I just lean slightly left or right. You want to look at the end of the tube and keep that string centered there and verify that the string is centered on your fin all at the same time. That, my friends, is sight alignment, sight picture. It's okay if it's off slightly as long as it's straight and slightly off. What you don't want is a cockeyed fin picture where the string is on that side of the fin at the base and on that side of the fin up at the top. I do also typically take my finger very gently and run down and wipe off any excess glue. We'll come back and put some nice big fillets on this. This is just to get the fin stuck to the tube to begin with. And you do have to also make sure that you push down on the fin and kind of squeeze the glue out. You don't want to put, you know, a 1/4 inch of glue, especially since I made that too thick. You got to be careful with that. If I put a little bit less colloidal in there, it would have been a little thinner. I would have had to hold the fin a little longer with my hand to keep it in place. But the pushing down on the fin I would have had to push a lot less on the fin to squeeze the excess glue out from underneath it. Anyway, just be sure that you got the bond and the surface, the mating surfaces, you know, close to one another. Don't leave the front of your fin, you know, with a huge gap where the back of the fin touching or anything along those lines. One more sight alignment and sight picture view. You can see we're off. Look at the circle down at the end of the tube. And then right there, we're in the center. And then our string is through the middle of the fin while we're looking down there. Again, that's pretty sensitive. And that's the whole idea is this, if you follow this, you follow it well, you can get these fins on pretty accurately. At least that's what I've found. Maybe your mileage will vary. But for me, this seems to have worked pretty well for a lot of years. So I figured I'd share with you how I go about doing this. All right, one thing you do have to be cautious of is there's a lot of light on this side of the fin, and then this is shadowed. And it can sometimes look like there's more fin on one side or the other because of the shadow. So just be cognizant of that. But that looks pretty good to me. Now again, the biggest trick here is don't touch it, don't bump it, and hopefully your fin doesn't fall over or do anything, right? I usually babysit this a little bit and just till I know that the glue starts to set up. And that's why you keep your glue around and kind of see where you're at in the set process. Now this big glob in here cooked off. There's a big hard rock in the middle of it, but there's the rest of this glue. And once it starts to get super tacky, as long as your fin hasn't moved, then you're probably pretty safe to leave it for a few hours and let it fully set. And so now that you see we got this one fin on, it'll be a lot easier to conceptualize. We're going to rotate the whole thing over 180 degrees, and we're going to do this fin here next. And we're going to make sure that that string goes straight through both fins. And you do need, like I said, you do need the index mark just to kind of have a general idea of where to put the fin. But once you start using the string like this, then that mark is a guide, not a rule. One thing I may have failed to mention is to make sure the fin isn't on crooked, this part here further to one side and the front the other way, or vice versa. When you're looking straight down this tube and you're dead center down at the end, you should be able to cover up basically the whole edge of the top of the fin. That whole edge should be covered by that string in that sight picture. And if you can do that, that fin is on pretty darn straight. If it hangs out a little bit like this, now pretend this string was dead center of the tube, and if the fin hangs out like that, then the fin's on crooked. That is part of why you put a pencil line on the tube. So that helps you basically locate the fin initially much more accurately to begin with. But this is, in my book, the final answer is right there in that sight picture. Longer tubes have a pretty big advantage in terms of sight picture, and because you got a lot of distance, and so you get kind of a better, runway of string to look at. The other thing is you got plenty of weight down to the other end. You'll notice that coupler's not glued in, but I've put it in there, and I can put, weight inside the tube or whatever, but that's to help so that this end doesn't want to tip over. This is a very long tube, don't have that problem, but on a rocket this size, you can see that there's not a whole lot of tube. And so what I would do in that case is I would take that block up here, I'll move it way up close to this one, clamp it down, and then use a sandbag or whatever I've got, and set it on top of the tube to hold it down while I glue the fins. So here it is. Fin is glued. We stayed in alignment overnight. I very rarely have the fins actually move on me. And if I know they might move on me, like I said, I tape them or brace them or do something. But there we go. So now, very carefully, without bumping our string, preferably, we want to rotate this. The very first thing we do is try to get this sight alignment, sight picture set up for that bottom fin. It can take a little bit of finesse, but we'll get there. All right, that looks pretty good. I'll get a level and I'll put it on here. Now these fins are shaped. They're not the same width the whole way. If you're using standard carbon fiber, fiberglass, G10 fins or something, it'd be real easy to put a level on that and verify that it's perfectly up and down. This is what I mean about the fins not like perfectly flat. It's wider in the middle and at the edges, and it's also wider at the bottom than it is at the top. So putting a level on this will be somewhat challenging, but what we'll do is we'll use this piece out here near the edge. All right, that's close. And we have to decide. We can even use the center line, this, of the fin as our guide for our bubble. And we are pretty close. This is kind of how I do it, and then come over here. Now, every time I move the camera to give you a better view, I'm tipping the level, so you'll have to trust me. Sorry about the light flicker. I got a bad light in the shop. I bet it's going to show up terrible on the video. I think I got that pretty close. Close enough that I'm going to go ahead and glue the next fin. Now I put a mark on the tube up here. We can also sight the mark, but the mark might be off a little bit. We'll use it as a guide. I've also marked my cross piece. That's how far back the fin is, but that's where the edge of the fin is supposed to be. And we'll just use that as a guide, and we'll use the string and the other fin now to truly align the fins straight up and down and get an overall sight picture right here that has both fins in that string line. And you can see just how sensitive that is. That's probably as close as I ever get them. We won't know until we turn the thing and put a level across if we really have them straight. I can do that real quick and show you what I mean. The string is going to sway, but normally I get the big level out and I put it this way. And that's how we're going to index our next set of fins. But I do have this bubble up here, so if we take this very carefully. And again, I'm doing this with one hand, so it's hard to show. And as soon as I let go of, as soon as I focus on the camera, I can't focus on the level. But yeah, basically, there it is. That's you get the idea. And so you can just sight down the edge of the level on those fins and see if they're straight. I mean, if one of the fins looks kind of like this as you're looking at it, then you know that fin's not really on there straight, right? You want both fins. When you have one fin this way, lined up nice and even on the edge, you don't want the other fin to look like this or like this. There it is, straight down the middle, and the fin, both of the fins, the bottom and the top fin, are almost covered by the string. So there, get it dead center down at the far end See how I'm wiggling back and forth side to side? The sight picture changes slightly. Dead center. And you'll see that the fin, the edge of the fin almost disappears behind the string. And you can't even hardly see the bottom fin. But it's there. There you go, straight down the tube, right through the middle. And that, my friends, is how I mount the fins. These particular fins go 1 inch from the base of the tube. And so I've marked my spot for the back of the fin to sit. All right, now we've got to mix a little bit of epoxy with some colloidal so that the glue doesn't completely run off. We don't need a whole lot. We're going to end up mixing way more than we'll need, but that's all right. We'll put a little bit on this and then we'll tack it on there, and I'll show you the sight alignment, the updated sight alignment sight picture once there's a fin on the rocket. Okay, again, hard to do with one hand occupied videoing, but this is the idea. Tip, and you just want to sight across the bottom of these fins there, and then make adjustments to the rotation of the tube until that level is dead center. We use that markup on top as a general guide, reference, or whatever, and then once we have this set where we want it and we're happy with the alignment relative to the next fin position, the next indexing of the next fin, then we put a 1 inch mark, and so that we are putting the fins the same distance from the end. And yet one more way to check and see if your fins are working out the way you want them to and they're all perpendicular and all that, is get a square and kind of sight it there and underneath, and make sure everything all aligns where you expect it to. It isn't nothing looks terribly out of shape, out of whack, out of square, etc. One thing I do want to show you is, so what if this happens and all of a sudden your string that you're supposed to be adjusting with, I've exaggerated of course, you bump it and now the thing's moving. All right, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to hold it right there, and except yeah, it's still wiggling. And what I do is I put my hand on the ground and I kind of let it run into me and settle. When I slowly move my hand away, and that'll settle your string a lot faster.